Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to my Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Thank you. Welcome to the Party Pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 155. I'm again talking to our Erik Suarez. He was back. He was on several months ago, to talk about Javier Milei. Today we're going to talk about Milei's speech at the World Economic Forum. I know we're a little late to the party with that, but because I've read a lot of other analysis, but we definitely thought this was worth covering, so I brought Erik back, and we're going to go to Screen Loud here pretty soon, and we'll talk about that speech. What do you think, first of all, what do you think of Milei so far, Erik? It seems like it's been a pretty great almost 2 months now.
Yes, I will agree. I think that he, of course, has facing some challenges, especially with there's always these left-wing groups that are more radical, that it doesn't matter if things are going well or things are going bad, are going to protest and going to blame him for everything. We have seen some protests, but I think he's been handling really well. He, of course, I think there's something to admire, especially in his first speech addressing the nation, I guess, that the best thing that he could have said was make an overall analysis of how he's receiving the country from the Kirchneristas. He did a really good job just summarizing everything that the legacy of the Kirchnerista government and how terrible they left Argentina. And now he is, summarizing everything and basically being truthful and honest and direct to the people, that they're going to be hard months. They're going to be a hard few years even, but that they're doing everything they can to solve it. And I think that especially in the recent months with the policies that he's passing, the motosierra, or like the chainsaw plan that he's been implementing, I think that things are looking forward and things are looking good for Argentina. And I think the most important part is that he's staying to his word of trying to really cut fiscal spending in Argentina. And I think that's very beneficial for them.
Yeah, and I think he's already, at least if he can maybe get the peso to stabilize, which it looks like it is stabilizing, that will be a good sign, if he can at least show there's some progress. But one of the challenges of free market reforms is you often have to go through some short-term pain to get to the pleasure, and sometimes the people just aren't patient enough to wait for that, and they just don't trust the politicians. I'm going to go into presentation mode here, first of all. Screen layout. There's one thing I want to present, first of all. Share screen. Yeah. And so, the first thing we're going to show is, we're talking about the protesters. I want to show here, first of all, this is a map of the area. The Plaza de Mayo, the Casa Rosada is there, and we can go to aerial view, but we're showing all of this, and they call it the pink house. You can kind of see it's the pink house on top of Zamir. And this is the Plaza de Mayo. That is a wide open space. So if anybody wants to protest Milei, they can go in that nice wide open space on the west side of his house and protest. Right. Milei has made it clear that he does not want people blocking traffic. So you see these little streets around here. He doesn't want you in there. But these spaces where there's nice grass, the big walkways, you can go protest there to your heart's desire, right on the west side of the pink house, and Milei will see you, and maybe he'll even come out and shake your hand, or maybe not. But yes, that's where you can see Milei and have your voice heard. It's definitely something he's doing. So don't give us this nonsense that Milei is outlawing protests. So there's your area if you want to go protest Milei. I've been there.
Right, there's a difference, right? Because when you start blocking the street and making picket lines, like usually has been the tradition of the Argentinian hard left, because that's usually how they operate, especially. You're not only damaging, the public areas and stopping traffic, you're actually stopping people from going to work, for earning their money. You're making a bigger impact on the city and stopping opportunity cost of maybe somebody, especially in the situation of Argentina, where a day of work lost may be even life or death, especially with the inflation prices and everything going up. So I think it sets up a really good precedent of you can protest if you do it the right way. There's no doubt about that. But if you start again blocking the streets and doing all of these things that not only harm, I guess, the government image, but it harms, the people that actually want to go out and work and do a positive impact in their own lives, they're not
Yes.
going to allow it, which is something that you will think should be very common, but in Argentina it hasn't been.
Not to mention fire trucks and emergency medical services. But yes, okay, now we're going to go to this speech at Davos, the World Economic Forum. Milei went to that and he flew on, looks like he flew on Lufthansa. And this is another cool thing about Milei. He gets on he goes out and goes on these commercial airlines where everybody can talk to him and he says hi to people. And, this is the difference between the president of a republic and a king. The president of a republic goes out and flies on the airlines with everybody else and goes through all the same nonsense. If he wants to fly first class, that's cool. But yes, here we go with the speech at the World Economic Forum, and we're going to get it full screen as best we can. So, all dressed up, wearing the glasses. Sometimes he wears the glasses, sometimes he doesn't. I think it does kind of help. It makes him look like he's not wearing the glasses yet, but he is during the speech.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's for me a great, great honor to welcome Javier Milei, as you know, is the freely elected president of Argentina. And it's actually your first trip to a foreign country after you have been elected. First, congratulations for your election, and congratulations also to your sister who managed your election campaign. I think you, sometimes people would say with more radical methods, but you introduce a new spirit to Argentina, making Argentina much more related to free enterprise, to entrepreneurial activities, also to bring Argentina back to the rule of law. So we have a very extraordinary person among us today. And of course, we are all eager to listen to you. And again, a very cordial welcome to the World Economic Forum.
Do you know who that lady is in the plaid?
I don't recognize her.
The woman who walked out with him. Yeah, nobody I recognize either. Maybe it's just somebody else at the WF. Klaus starts out, he's playing nice, which is typical of somebody like him. They're always playing nice in public.
Yes.
Committed to improving the state of the world. Oh, yes. I should point out this is probably some artificial intelligence dubbing that we're going to be listening to here.
Right.
Because he speaks Spanish, but this is what everybody else heard, so we're going to hear what everybody else heard. So, yeah.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Today, I'm here to tell you that the Western world is in danger. And it is endangered because those who are supposed to have to defend the values of the West are co-opted by a vision of the world that inexorably leads to socialism and thereby to poverty. Unfortunately, in recent decades, motivated by some well-meaning individuals willing to help others, and others motivated by the wish to belong to a privileged caste, the main leaders of the Western world have abandoned the model of freedom for different versions of what we call collectivism.
Now, he starts off, I think, great. He goes right after the enemy. What do you think, Eric?
I mean, yeah, he starts in a very Milei manner. He's never been afraid of going places and telling everybody what he believes, and he happens to believe in individualism. He happens to believe that the world and the West is going in a wrong direction, and he's just, it could be in Argentina, in a talk show in Argentina, or literally in the World Economic Forum, which I would say it's one of the biggest hubs of people and collectivist theorists, where they reunite and try to promote each other. He went to the hub and said straight up what he believes, and I think how more Milei can he get?
Yeah. Does he write all of his own stuff, or does he have people writing stuff for him? Do we know?
I will guess that he probably has some speech writers at this point. I wouldn't doubt it, but they're heavily. I will say that he was heavily involved in the process of making his speeches. You can tell, because if you notice from the way he was when he started in talk shows to now, he maintains certain characteristics of what he believes and the ways that he says things. Now, of course, if you're a president, I feel like you need to be more careful on the ways that you say things, but you can still recognize Milei's.
Yeah, and he's got the glasses on now too. I don't know if he has a strategy with his glasses, or if he just doesn't. But I do think in a case like this, the glasses make him look more intellectual. So, yeah, I think he's very conscious of the image he's presenting, and so,
yeah.
But yeah, here, let's go back to the speech then. Yeah.
Here to tell you that collectivist experiments are never the solution to the problems that afflict the citizens of the world. Rather, they are the root cause. Do believe me, no one better placed than us, Argentines, to testify to these 2 points. When we adopted the model of freedom back in 1860, in 35 years we became a leading world power. And when we embraced collectivism over the course of the last 100 years, we saw how our citizens started to become systematically impoverished, and we dropped to spot number 140 globally. But before having the discussion, it would first be important for us to take a look at the data that demonstrate why free enterprise capitalism is not just the only possible system to end world poverty, but also that it's the only morally desirable system to achieve this. If we look at the history of economic progress, we can see how between the year 0 and the year 1800 approximately, world per capita GDP practically remained constant throughout the whole reference period. If you look at a graph of the evolution of economic growth throughout the history of humanity, you would see a hockey stick graph, an exponential function that remained constant for 90% of the time and which was exponentially triggered starting in the 19th century. The only exception to this history of stagnation was in the late 15th century with the discovery of the American continent. But for this exception, throughout the whole period between the year 0 and the year 1800, global per capita GDP stagnated. Now, it's not just that capitalism brought about an explosion in wealth from the moment it was adopted as an economic system, but also if you look at the data, what you will see is that growth continues to accelerate throughout the whole period. And throughout the whole period between the year 0 and the year 1800, the per capita GDP growth rate remained stable at around 0.02% annually, so almost no growth. Starting in the 19th century, with the Industrial Revolution, the compound annual growth rate was 0.66%. And at that rate, in order to double per capita GDP, you would need some 107 years. Now, if you look at the period between the year 1900 and the year 1950, the growth rate accelerated to 1.66% a year. So you no longer need 107 years to double per capita GDP, but 66. And if you take the period...
These are some pretty interesting stats he's got here. I mean, going up to the stagnation from, the year 0 to 1800, I suppose there was some fluctuation. Do you know where he got these numbers by chance?
I wouldn't bet on anything, but I believe that these can probably be found in, I believe that most of the times that he gets data and information, he usually uses International Monetary Fund and even the same World Economic Forum data. Yeah. I would say, and again, like the data, it's you can put makeup, you can try to divert the reality, and try to justify things using words, but the data speaks by its own. And I think that,
Yeah.
again, one of the strongholds of Millet is that he always speaks using a lot of data and explains it very well. And again, that hockey stick reference works plays out very well because it's true. At the end of the day, since the Industrial Revolution, it's capitalism who has been the motivator and the reason why the world has gotten out of poverty. Before that, it was very constant poverty, and out of that, after the Industrial Revolution and the beginning of capitalism, it just
Yeah.
goes straight up.
I don't. He said hockey stick, which I don't know if anybody down there plays ice hockey, but I know Patricia Bullrich was actually fairly prominent playing field hockey. So I wondered if those really were his words.
Well,
You know,
that's when you notice the
yeah,
influence of the speechwriters. Because if you when you go to a society,
yeah,
to other places, more internationally, he brings out a very common sport, especially in the north. Which is very smart on his part, and of course of his speechwriters probably. But that just shows you that he came prepared. He came to hit hard and to just hit the right spots and to promote his
yeah,
message of liberty and capitalism back into a society that has lost it.
I wonder, do you think he's really putting this speech out for the other people there, or is he really just giving knows that he has a chance to give a speech really to the whole world? Maybe he's just putting it out to everybody, all the normal citizens around the world, because he knows he's got you've got so you ask yourself, you've got 30 minutes to speak before the World Economic Forum. What are you going to do with that? I mean, you're gonna try to make the most out of that 30 minutes.
Correct. And I don't think this was a speech directed to the people inside the World Economic Forum. Again, this is one of the biggest and most reputable organizations currently in the world, and it has been filled with people who just repeat the exact message of collectivism, of living away capitalism, of environmentalism, and people who may not be into political theory or economics theory to the degree that most of us are because we're interested. They just take these things as facts, and it's good that he's using that, let's say, media or that medium to spread this message back of individual liberty and free markets, because there's always going to be people that listen. There's usually this saying that says, when you debate, you're not trying to convince the other person that of your point, you're trying to convince the audience. And I think that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to convince everybody who may see this speech,
Yeah,
which actually became one of the most seen speeches in the history of the World Economic Forum, according to replays and reviews. I read that somewhere, and which is great. He's achieving his goal. He's spreading his message and spreading his ideology back, and the ideology of free markets and liberalism. And I think that's amazing for us, the people who believe in that and who want that message to spread to as many people as possible. We need to make liberalism be the commonality again in our region and in our hemisphere. And I think he's achieving that message through this. And I think that's great.
So let's go back. Yeah,
Between 1950 and the year 2000, you will see that the growth rate was 2.1%. Again, the CAGR, which would mean that in only 33 years, we could double the world's per capita GDP. This trend, far from stopping, remains well alive today. If we take the period between the year 2000 and 2023, the growth rate again accelerated to 3% a year, which means that we could double world per capita GDP in just 23 years. That said, when you look at per capita GDP since the year 1800 and until today, what you will see is that after the Industrial Revolution, global per capita GDP multiplied by over 15 times, which meant a boom in growth that lifted 90% of the global population out of poverty. We should remember that by the year 1800, about 95% of the world's population lived in extreme poverty, and that figure dropped to 5% by the year 2020, prior to the pandemic. The conclusion is obvious. Far from being the cause of our problems, free trade capitalism as an economic system is the only instrument we have to end hunger, poverty, and extreme poverty across our planet. The empirical evidence is unquestionable. Therefore, since there is no doubt that free enterprise capitalism is superior in productive terms, the left-wing doxa has attacked capitalism, alleging matters of morality, saying, that's what the detractors claim, that it's unjust. They say that capitalism is evil because it's individualistic and that collectivism is good because it's altruistic, of course, with the money of others. So they therefore advocate for social justice. But
I think this is key here because we've gotten away from the statistical arguments and now he's getting more and maybe some of the more moral arguments. I do think that in some cases people could argue that some of the achievements of the 20th century might have been due to, some people say, well, these happened because, we didn't have capitalism, but we had this mixed system where we had a public-private partnerships, as opposed to some areas which were more capitalist. Do you think some people might draw that conclusion from this or not? I mean,
I believe that, well, let's say, I do believe that free market has been the main reason for which society has advanced so much. And there's a lot of people who always argue, well, if it weren't because of social movements like some of the workers' rights and government intervention, we wouldn't be where we are today either. It's like the combination or the mixed market, as you say. I don't necessarily agree with that. I do believe that while all of these things were born, like worker rights and all these things, are actually product of capitalism more than actual Marxist or left-wing dogmas or doctrine, because it is in the interest of the capitalist, of the producer, to maximize production, of course, and to maximize the benefit of the worker. So in that sense, as an example, if you have a worker that can last for 20 years, right, and then you have to replace him, instead of having one that can last 40 years and then you have to replace him, it is that replacement cost can be higher in most cases. Therefore, it's in the interest of the same producer and the same, let's say, owner of the company or whatever it is, to keep workers for the longest time possible. And with that, we come to the conclusion that it is because of free markets and capitalism that we have all of the benefits that we enjoy today. So yeah, I guess I would agree 100% with what Milei is saying right now. I think that there is always a propaganda argument, the rhetorical argument, the moral argument of the left to claim victories that aren't theirs. And I believe that we have to go back and teach about how it's actually capitalism and free markets who have allowed for these victories and this progress and this reduction of poverty worldwide, and not left-wing dogma or collectivism, right?
yeah.
I feel that on that sense, this is a key moment, not only because he starts tackling that issue, but it is rare nowadays to hear leaders say exactly what he's saying. Say that the left has claimed morality on things that are not theirs to claim, victories that are not theirs. Usually, it will be very rare or impossible to hear presidents of countries claim this. And here comes Milei and says this in the World Economic Forum. I think that's a huge victory. Only just for him to say that and to have that space to say that, I think that's already a victory. And I think we have to follow that rhetoric of us defending the victories that correspond to free markets and not allowing the left to keep taking those victories from us.
Oh yeah, because the left likes to blame capitalism for the problems caused by interventions, and then give credit to the interventions for the problems that are
correct,
or the good things that come out of capitalism.
And they claim this humility, and because the left is collective, it means humility and moral, which is not true. We have to realize it is the individual who takes the best decision for himself, and it's not the collective that allows this. But
yeah. And I think the corporate welfare interventions are generally more destructive than the socialist interventions. But here we go. Okay.
this concept, which in the developed world became fashionable in recent times, in my country has been a constant in political discourse for over 80 years. The problem is that social justice is not just, and it doesn't contribute either to the general well-being. Quite on the contrary, it's an intrinsically unfair idea because it's violent. It's unjust because the state is financed through tax, and taxes are collected coercively. Or can any one of us say that they voluntarily pay taxes, which means that the state is financed through coercion, and that the higher the tax burden, the higher the coercion, and the lower the freedom. Those who promote social justice, the advocates, start with the idea that the whole economy is a pie that can be shared differently. But that pie is not a given. It's wealth that is generated in what Israel Kirzner, for instance, calls a market discovery process.
I just want to bring this moment up. I love the fact that he cites Israel Kirzner, the great Austrian economist who got his PhD under Mises and who is still alive. He's over 90 now, but I hope Milei, I've said it on several forums, I hope Milei can get a chance to meet Kirzner in person. And because Kirzner is also a rabbi with 8 kids, by the way, too. Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
I had the pleasure of meeting him in '94 at the Foundation for Economic Education, and he's a nice guy and definitely he's done a lot of good work over the years. So let's get back to that. Okay, and it's a.
If the goods or services offered by a business are not wanted, the business will fail unless it adapts to what the market is demanding. If they make a good quality product at an attractive price, they will do well and produce more. So the market is a discovery process in which the capitalists will find the right path as they move forward. But if the state punishes capitalists when they're successful and gets in the way of the discovery process, they will destroy their incentives, and the consequence is that they will produce less, the pie will be smaller, and this will harm society as a whole. Collectivism, by inhibiting these discovery processes and hindering the appropriation of discoveries, ends up binding the hands of entrepreneurs and prevents them from offering better goods and services at
This is another great point. He talks about the discovery process.
Yep.
And how it just, how you need a free system to have a discovery process that functions.
Correct. And it's interesting. I don't know, but like these are very common things that if you're an economist or if you're like follow economic theory and political theory of liberalism, these are things that are very simple to know and that we know, but most people sadly have forgotten or they have never been taught or they had taught otherwise. And it's great. I keep pointing on the fact that it's great that we're having again these conversations and we're putting these empirical facts on the table, and that it is a leader with such a strong history of economic education and things like that who's putting it on the table again, because we could be talking about it in different way in different places and things, but we're never going to have the impact and the let's say the audience that Milei as a president of Argentina will have, which makes again this speech in the place that he make it and the organization that he's talking to way more valuable than most people would just will think on the surface.
This is I think he understands. This there's so much that can happen. I mean, the factor is you just can't control for everything, and when you have everything regulated, there's no incentive to try new things, or there's no. It's just amazing how with markets things just get better, in almost inevitably.
a better price. So how come that academia, international organizations, economic theory, and politics demonize an economic system that has not only lifted out of extreme poverty 90% of the world's population, but has continued to do this faster and faster? And this is morally superior and just. Thanks to free trade capitalism, it is to be seen that the world is now living its best moment. Never in all of mankind's or humanity's history has there been a time of more prosperity than today. This is true for all. The world of today has more freedom, is rich, is more peaceful and prosperous. And this is particularly true for countries that have more freedom and have economic freedom and respect the property rights of individuals, because countries that have more freedom are 12 times richer than those that are repressed, and the lowest decile in terms of distribution in free countries are better off than 90% of the population of repressed countries, and poverty is 25 times lower, and extreme poverty is 50 times lower. And citizens in free countries live 25% longer than citizens in repressed countries. Now, what?
Yeah, that's another. Yeah, again, he's brought those statistics up before. That freer people have more prosperity.
And
the
it works.
life expectancy also.
It works because it's true, and he's reading, these statistics, but it matches the overall argument that he's trying to make, which is, why are we proposing more collectivism in these kind of forums instead of proposing the things that we know work? We have empirical evidence that capitalism reduces poverty overall in the world. We have evidence that countries that embrace capitalism and free markets have better living standards. They have better peaceful relations. They have all of these things. Why are we, as the World Economic Forum, or not we, I guess, in this case, why is the World Economic Forum not promoting these ideals, and instead is diverting and actually punishing the people who are trying to who bring the wealth and create wealth, right? I think that's the overall message, and these arguments and these data just provide a just like a bed of support for those points that he's trying to make, and he correctly makes.
I think this might be also for some of the businessmen out there who made the really successful people who made a lot of money, and now they don't seem to be supporting free markets either, even though they did make money in free and open markets. But yeah, let's go back to this. Yeah.
Is it that we mean when we talk about libertarianism? And let me quote the words of the greatest authority on freedom in Argentina, Professor Alberto Venegas Lich Jr., who says that
again, another case, he cites another great Austrian economist, Alberto Venegas Lich. Both of these guys are also affiliated with the Foundation for Economic Education, a great organization that's been fighting the good fight since 1946, I believe. So none of these other organizations would exist nowadays without fees. So thank you very much. And let's keep going. Here. Yes.
Libertarianism is the unrestricted respect for the life project of others, based on the principle of non-aggression, in defense of the right to life, liberty, and property. Its fundamental institutions being private property, markets free from state intervention, free competition, the division of labor, and social cooperation, as part of which success is achieved only by serving others with goods of better quality or at a better price. In other words, capitalists, successful business people are social benefactors who, far from appropriating the wealth of others, contribute to the general well-being. Ultimately, a successful entrepreneur is a hero. And this is the model that we are advocating for the Argentina of the future, a model based on the fundamental principles of libertarianism, the defense of life, of freedom, and of property. Now, if free enterprise capitalism and economic freedom have proven to be extraordinary instruments to end poverty in the world, and we are now at the best time in the history of humanity, it is worth asking why I say that the West is endangered. And I say this precisely because in those of our countries that should defend the values of the free market, private property, and the other institutions of libertarianism, sectors of the political and economic establishment, some due to mistakes in their theoretical framework and others due to a greed for power are undermining the foundations of libertarianism, opening up the doors to socialism and potentially condemning us to poverty, misery, and stagnation. It should never be forgotten that socialism is always and everywhere an impoverishing phenomenon that has failed in all countries where it's been tried out. It's been a failure economically, socially, culturally, and it also murdered over 100 million human beings. The essential problem in the West today is not just...
He's a little low there with 100 million, but he probably could have said 200 million. It would have been fine. But yeah,
I believe the official numbers that he used, that's from the book, the Black Book of Communism, where that's it. The data that I know they manage is 100 million, and counting, because we still have North Korea, we still have China, we still have countries that keep murdering people under those.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Well, if you throw in it was over 200 million if you throw in the wars, according to Death by Government by a guy named Rummel, and
right.
And that was before the Rwanda genocide, so which was a small one, but that was a horrible one. But yeah, we'll get back to this. But there's a lot of good stuff in here. But yeah, we're about halfway.
I wanted to like highlight one part. I think that all great speeches have like this phrase that is the one that is remembered. And for this speech particularly, I think that the phrase would be successful entrepreneurs are heroes, which is true because they are the ones who create wealth, that put the risk, and that the rewards that they get are shared for whole society. I think that's the best phrase that can summarize and for which this whole speech will be remembered would be successful entrepreneurs are heroes. And I think that's true. And I believe by that. And I think that all capitalists or liberals, libertarians, should be in favor of that.
Yeah, it can often be a big risk. Yeah, let's keep going.
Just that we need to come to grips with those who, even after the fall of the Berlin Wall and the overwhelming empirical evidence, continue to advocate for impoverishing socialism. But there's also our own leaders, thinkers, and academics who, relying on a misguided theoretical framework, undermine the fundamentals of the system that has given us the greatest expansion of wealth and prosperity in our history. The theoretical framework to which I refer is that of neoclassical economic theory, which designs a set of instruments that unwillingly or without meaning to ends up serving the intervention by the state, socialism, and social degradation. The problem with neoclassicals is that the model does map reality. So they put down their mistakes to supposed market failures rather than reviewing the premises of the model. On the pretext of a supposed market failure, regulations are introduced which only create distortions in the price system, prevent economic calculus, and therefore also prevent saving, investment, and growth. This problem lies mainly in the fact that not even supposedly libertarian economists understand what the market is, because if they did understand, it would quickly be seen that it's impossible for there to be something along the lines of market failures. The market is not a mere graph describing a curve of supply and demand. The market is a mechanism for social cooperation where you voluntarily exchange ownership rights. Therefore, based on this definition, talking about a market failure is an oxymoron. There are no market failures. If transactions are voluntary, the only context in which there can be is the state, which holds a monopoly on violence. Consequently, if someone considers that there is a market failure, I would suggest that they check to see if the state intervention involved. And if they find that that's not the case, I would suggest that they check again, because obviously there's a mistake. Market failures do not exist. An example.
I love this. He keeps saying it. Market failures do not exist. And they don't. It's
It's true. Market failures do not exist. It's usually the government intervening
yeah,
that ruins the interaction between humans. That's true. Usually monopolies. There's this huge, thing that they teach about how monopolies are the result of free markets, which is not true. Monopolies are created by the government, and whenever a market fails, that classic term, whenever that happens, that's it's not due to the market. It's due to the government getting there, and I think that it's great that
yeah,
again, I'm not gonna get tired of saying. I think Milei saying all of these things in that space in that audience to that audience. It's a beautiful. It's just something that we
yeah.
wish we could do all the time. But it's great that he has the opportunity, and it's great that so many people are
Yeah.
listening to that.
The market is just the sum total of every interaction and transaction that happens. Whether you go down and buy an ice cream cone, I go buy a pair of pants, somebody hires me to give a speech. I mean, it's all of the market's not some mystical force, and that the market is just people and their actions. It's not anything abstract. But they always act like it's something mystical or magical, and that it's not. That's why I've always hated Adam Smith. That whole people talk about the invisible hand. No, it's a completely visible hand. Everybody's it's there everywhere in front of you. And there
Exactly.
might be transaction, there might be secret transactions or secret deals, but it's all there.
Yes.
Of these so-called market failures described by the neoclassicals are the concentrated structures of the economy. However, without increasing returns to scale functions, whose counterpart are the concentrated structures of the economy, we couldn't possibly explain economic growth since the year 1800 until today. Isn't this interesting? Since the year 1800 onwards, with population multiplying by 8 or 9 times, per capita GDP grown by over 15 times. So there are growing returns, which took extreme poverty from 95% to 5%. However, the presence of growing returns involves concentrated structures, what we would call a monopoly. How come then that something that has generated so much well-being for the neoclassical theory is a market failure? Neoclassical economists think outside of the box. When a model fails, you shouldn't get angry with reality, but rather with the model and change it. The dilemma faced by the neoclassical model is that they say they wish to perfect the functioning of the market by attacking what they consider to be failures. But in so doing, they don't just open up the doors to socialism, but also go against economic growth. An example, regulating monopolies, destroying their profits, and destroying growing returns automatically would destroy economic growth. In other words, whenever you want to correct a supposed market failure inexorably, as a result of not knowing what the market is, or as a result of having fallen in love with a failed model, you are opening up the doors to socialism and condemning people to poverty. However, faced with the theoretical demonstration that state intervention is harmful and empirical evidence that it has failed couldn't have been otherwise, the solution to be proposed by collectivists is not greater freedom, but rather greater regulation, which creates a downward spiral of regulations until we're all poorer and the life of all of us depends on a bureaucrat sitting in a luxury office. Given the dismal failure of collectivist models and the undeniable advances in the free world, socialists were forced to change their agenda. They left behind the class struggle based on the economic system and replaced this with other supposed social conflicts which which are just as harmful to life as a community and to economic growth. The first of these new battles was the ridiculous and unnatural fight between man and woman. Libertarianism already provides for equality of these sexes. The cornerstone of our creed says that all humans are created equal, that we all have the same unalienable rights granted by the Creator, including life, freedom, and ownership. All that this radical feminism agenda has led to is greater state intervention to hinder the economic process, giving a job to bureaucrats who have not contributed anything to society. Examples, ministries of or international organizations devoted to propaganda. Another conflict presented by socialists is humans against nature, claiming that we human beings damage the planet, which should be protected at all costs, even going as far as advocating for population control mechanisms or the bloody abortion agenda. Unfortunately,
now he's talking about their depopulation agenda, I think. And he's doing this right in front of them,
The hub of where those ideas come from, basically. Yeah. I mean, I think again that's great. There's nothing better than to actually go to the place where all of these bad ideas and terrible proposals and are being created and manufactured, and just tell them it is wrong. It is terrible for us as humanity what they're trying to do, and tell them in their faces, basically, because I would bet that there's a lot of them who support those depopulation controls and feminism movements, things of that nature are there. And he's going there and telling in their faces what you're doing is actually terrible for humanity, and this is not going to end well, right? And I think that's great.
Yeah. He's right in the middle of the lion's den. He's not showing any fear here, which I love.
Yep. Very Milei. I mean, I don't know. I think this speech serves as to show Milei to the international audience. This is good for Milei to open more his audience outside of Argentina, where he's already well known, outside of Latin America, where he's well known, and now he's expanding and trying to reach to bigger audiences across the world, and trying to fight against these monster of collectivism, of anti-humanism, which is depopulation, and then against that promotes the fight against men and women. I think that he's reaching that audience, and I think that's great that he's reaching bigger audiences and providing something better to aspire to.
He's definitely making an impact on Latin America. I mean, I saw his book in the airport in Lima, Peru. So that's one place where they're paying attention. Let's go here. We got about 7 minutes left, I think.
These harmful ideas have taken a strong hold in our society. Neo-Marxists have managed to co-opt the common sense of the Western world, and this they have achieved by appropriating the media, culture, universities, and also international organizations. The latter case is the most serious one, probably, because these are institutions that have enormous influence on political and economic decisions of the countries that make up the multilateral organizations. Fortunately, there's more and more of us who are daring to make our voices heard, because we see that if we don't truly and decisively fight against these ideas, the only possible fate is for us to have increasing levels of state regulation, socialism, poverty, and less freedom, and therefore will be having worse standards of living. The West has unfortunately already started to go along this path. I know to many it may sound ridiculous to suggest that the West has turned to socialism, but it's only ridiculous if you only limit yourself to the traditional economic definition of socialism, which says that it's an economic system where the state owns the means of production. This definition, in my view, should be updated in the light of current circumstances. Today, states don't need to directly control the means of production to control every aspect of the lives of individuals. With tools such as printing money, debt, subsidies, controlling the interest rate, price controls, and regulations to correct the so-called market failures. They can control the lives and fates of millions of individuals. This is how we come to the point where, by using different names or guises, a good deal of the generally accepted political offers in most Western countries are collectivist variants, whether they proclaim to be openly communists, fascists, Nazis, socialists, social democrats, national socialists, Democrat Christians, or Christian Democrats, neo-Keynesians, progressive, populist, nationalists, or globalists. At bottom, there are no major differences. They all say that the state should steer all aspects of the lives of individuals. They all defend a model contrary to that one which led humanity to the most spectacular progress in its history. We have come here today to invite the rest of the countries in the Western world to get back on the path of prosperity, economic freedom, limited government, and unlimited respect for private property are essential elements for economic growth. And the impoverishment produced by collectivism is no fantasy, nor is it an inescapable fate. But it's a reality that we Argentines know very well. We have lived through this, we have been through this, because as I said earlier, ever since we decided to abandon the model of freedom that had made us rich, we have been caught up in a downward spiral, as part of which we are poorer and poorer day by day. So this is something we have lived through, and we are here to warn you about what can happen if the countries in the Western world that became rich through the model of freedom stay on this path of servitude. The case of Argentina is an empirical demonstration that no matter how rich you may be or how much you may have in terms of natural resources or how skilled your population may be or educated or how many bars of gold you may have in the central bank. If measures are adopted that hinder the free functioning of markets, free competition, free price systems, if you hinder trade, if you attack private property, the only possible fate is poverty.
Wow, yeah, he's right on the money again. Yeah, he's really he's getting close to wrapping up here, but yeah, he's really hitting everybody hard. What do you think, Eric?
He's right. He's right. I like the way that he phrases it, not as a critique. I mean, it is a critique, but he phrases it on the sense that it is an invitation. It is an invitation for other countries and for other leaders, and for even regular people who are listening, to go back to the path that works. We have been on that path for years, for hundreds of years, and then we suddenly stopped. And he's inviting, after giving the data, after giving his arguments, and after giving examples of what he's talking about, he invites again the countries and the people to go back to the path that works. I think that's a great way of phrasing it. I think that's the right message to send. Even though it's a critique of what they are all doing, it is, it's harder to convince somebody when you are being hostile to them. The fact that he makes it an invitation is actually a very smart move. But other than that, I think he also hits on the money when it comes to, he mentioned something, I completely forgot, but I forgot how he phrased it. But he goes and says that it is through, I completely blanked on how he said it. I want to say the exact thing he said. Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It is not. But basically, that we have to invite them again, and we have to make those societal changes again. And the redefinition of socialism, I think it's on point. We have to redefine socialism. We have to redefine based on these current trends and how states have learned better ways to control its population. I think that's on point. We all experienced it during COVID. We experienced with this current inflation, how control of the interest rates and control of money printing practices and quantitative easing has destroyed the livelihoods of many.
Yeah,
I think that's true, and I think that I join on his call of redefining socialism, because there is newer ways for states to control absolutely the lives of its citizens without necessarily owning the means of production. And I think that's 100% true.
Yeah, he didn't mention central bank digital currencies, but he kind of came close to that. That was interesting. But yeah, certainly through money printing and other things. And interesting enough, some of the central bankers have known this.
Yes.
Therefore, in concluding, I would like to leave a message for all business people here and for those who are not here in person but are following from around the world. Do not be intimidated either by the political class or by parasites who live off the state. Do not surrender to a political class that only wants to stay in power and retain its privileges. You are social benefactors, you're heroes, you're the creators of the most extraordinary period of prosperity we've ever seen. Let no one tell you that your ambition is immoral. If you make money, it's because you offer a better product at a better price, thereby contributing to general well-being. Do not surrender to the advance of the state. The state is not the solution. The state is the problem itself. You are the true protagonists of this story. And rest assured that as from today, Argentina is your staunch, unconditional ally. Thank you very much, and long live freedom. Damn it.
Yeah, that was a winner right there. And then he ends up leaves off
that
his,
end was 100% Milei. I have zero doubts. That's 100% Milei right there.
Viva la libertad, carajo. Yeah.
Viva la libertad, carajo. I think that he, again, the highlight of the speech and the main message that I think he wants to translate and to give people is that, especially to business people, to entrepreneurs, is that they are the heroes. They are the ones who create wealth. They're the ones who are the protagonists of the most wealth, of the time of most wealth in the history of humanity. I think that's great. I think that actually that was his real audience, not the people, not the bureaucrats, not everybody who is at the forum right there, but any businessman, any entrepreneur who is watching, who has been told that they are the problem, who has been told that they are the cause of anti-morality, that they create, that they benefit out of the work of others or things of that nature that we hear all the time. I think the message is that they are not, don't be intimidated, that because you're the real heroes. And I agree 100% with that.
Yeah, I think he's really telling people to stop, to get out there and fight, because it seems like the part of the reason why socialism is won is just because everybody on the good side either hasn't been courageous enough, or they've been lazy, or they've been just trying to compromise. I was listening to a great video with Nick Freitas, and he talked about how after the fall of the Berlin Wall, the academics got more bold. And they actually said, "Well, our system's no longer associated with the Soviet Union, so we can now be more open about what we are." And I'm like, "Oh my goodness!" You just.
It is true, I guess. There is a fact that academics have become more to the left in the recent years. You can go into a university like the one I'm in, and you're probably going to find a good amount of openly Marxist professors who really believe that capitalism and that entrepreneurs and business people are the devil, almost, and that they earn wealth on the behalf of others. And that's not true. That couldn't be further from the truth. And the empirical evidence shows that whenever capitalists and entrepreneurs start small businesses and start, individual goals to make themselves better, that's when the whole society and humanity develops the most. That's when most of humanity grows and reaches out of poverty. That's when the best moment of humanity has happened. That we have to defeat the message that capitalism is works against the interests of people. We have to defeat the message that capitalism creates wealth for a few and leaves everybody else behind, and that businessmen benefit from the wealth of others on behalf of others. And when everything shows that the best moments in human history, and the time that in human history when we have gone from poor to rich, has been when capitalism, free markets, and free trade has been the core cross, um, has been the motivator for that. So I think that we have to defeat that message, and we have to be courageous, and also remind entrepreneurs that they're the real heroes of this story. They get wealthy by providing a service to people and providing better goods at at lower prices, and that overall helps humanity and helps society. So we have to remind them that they're doing something good.
Yeah, I've said for a while, on this show that this was the most important election in the history of the world, and I wonder if is he start does he think that too? Maybe that its election could be the most important election in the history of the world. I mean,
Well, it
I
depends on
think
what he
it's
does. It depends on what he
seems like
does. Depends on what he
yeah,
does.
yeah. There's still a lot of factors involved, but this could really go somewhere. Maybe even lead to a resurgence among pro free market ideas. It's
I do believe that he has the potential to bring this awakening, as he's already doing in Latin America. As you said, you saw a lot of books about him in Lima when you were in Peru. I bet
I saw
Chile
one
is
book in the
also,
Lima airport,
yeah.
so and that was his book. I think it's Camino de Libertario, the Path of the Libertarian.
Yes. So
Uh,
that brings you that he's already creating a social movement. He's creating a cultural movement of liberty, of libertarianism, and that's a positive thing. We hope that continues, definitely. And if he maintains this path, I think that he could become that icon or role model for many generations to go back and fight the good fight and bring libertarianism back to the spotlight of humanity, and contribute to go back to this golden age of humanity that brought us from, as he said, 90%, 95% poverty to 90 to 5% poverty.
yeah, I mean, let's hope it goes that way. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why. You know,
Yeah.
uh, well, that was a great speech. Eric, what else has been going on? You've got connections. What else do you think? How much impact do you think this is going to happen around South America? I
Well,
mean,
we don't have we don't have to go that far. We're already seeing the impacts of it. I think that this speech is probably one of the most viewed across the globe when it comes to World Economic Forum history. A lot of people have seen it. It has been, I think I've seen a lot of people go back to this video and say that this has been one of the most impactful Javier Milei speeches. And I think one of the most academic and the most well spoken ones of him. I think he's already having an impact. And I think that this could even be used as the first step for many other leaders and movements to grow out of this, because it is different when you are just a guy in a talk show speaking about these things to when you're the president of a country speaking about this in the middle of the World Economic Forum. It has a different weight. And I think that when once more people start seeing this as a correct message to go forward, and that it is all right to have these ideas in a more academic and global scenario, that's going to bring a lot of that. This is going to be a huge motivator for many people, and that it can be done. And that's the most important
yeah,
part. It can be done.
yeah. Do a lot of people talk about him in Miami because there's so many people, who've immigrated from Venezuela and other places? Because you're in Miami.
Yeah. In Miami, well, most Latinos know who Milei is already. I think that,
Yeah,
especially in political groups, a lot of people know who Milei is. If you go to talk to Argentinians, they all know who Milei is, of course, and
yeah,
most of young people support him, which is that's actually the most encouraging part. Is that a lot of young generations really admire and see that as a real possibility of change and progress for their country. Young Argentinians who came here to Miami in packs, escaping socialism basically, and the terrible opportunities that the previous government left in Argentina. They came to Miami, and now they see Milei as a hope of maybe one day going back, maybe one day being able to live in their country with great opportunities and seeing their country grow. And I think that's amazing. I think the fact that so many young people are embracing these ideas is great. And not only Argentinians, but we're seeing it all across nationalities in Latin America. So Peruvians, I've seen a lot of who admire Milei. I've seen a lot of Venezuelans, of course. We have a special place in our heart. I feel this is the first election in history that I can be happy about ever, which has been Milei's election. And for many Venezuelans.
And some people told me that there were a lot of Venezuelans who went down there and were who left Venezuela and went there and actually were helping him out. And
yeah, I mean, for Venezuelans, we know we're an example of what happens when you embrace socialism, when you embrace collectivist ideals, and
Yes.
we everywhere we go, we don't want to repeat that. In fact, I think I saw an article that says that at least 80% of Venezuelan men who migrate to other countries are actively helping right-wing or libertarian candidates to win because they don't want to repeat what they went through, and I think that's amazing too.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's so much for this belief that they're just, of course, American conservatives don't get that at all, but they think they're all coming here because they're socialists. But don't get me started on that one. But yeah, Venezuela. Yeah, I know so many Venezuela. Or I don't know if you know our ally Pedro too. He's on the list. If he goes back to Venezuela, he will be arrested.
Yeah, there's a lot of us like that. Yep.
Yeah, I know Russians as well. So if they go back to Russia, I still need to get one on here. Well, Eric, you have anything else to say before we go? It's been great having you back. We got a good analysis of this speech.
Right. Yeah, no, thank you again for inviting me. And I guess that, we have to keep supporting Milei as long as he does things right. I believe he was going to keep doing things right, not only through his speeches and his messages, but also his actions. And I think he has been on the line. Like, what he says is what he does. And I think that we have to keep supporting that, especially all across the world. We can try to replicate his strategy and try to make sure that whatever cultural changes that he's making, we can support it in Argentina, but also replicate it across the world, across the hemisphere and across the world.
Yeah, and I think South America has a really good chance to make this right. Maybe they'll save Western civilization. So okay. Well, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Go buy my novel, Escape from the Village. I'm Chris Baker for Fountain Forum 155, and we're out. Thank you, Erik Suarez.